Welcome to Inspired, a podcast by Project Lead the Way, where we will get into some of the most pressing issues happening in K-12 education today. Today's episode is part one of a two-part episode. Many of you know Project Lead the Way. We're a nearly 30-year-old nonprofit started by one teacher at 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 High School in upstate New York nearly 30 years ago. Today, we're working with approximately 2.5 million students, 16,000 programs, over 100,000 trained Project Lead the Way educators all across the country in elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. And they're providing students with a very engaging, highly relevant learning experience. And it's really important that we talk about that because that's really one of the most important things happening in schools today, is a way to engage kids, help them get excited about and prepared for their future. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues at Project Lead the Way, Chief Impact Officer, Dr. Katie Minahan, Chief Product Officer, 𝐏𝐿-𝐶hPRStein. So Katie, talk just a little bit about your background.
Great. Good morning, Dave. I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Impact Officer for Project Lead the Way. And on the impact team, we serve a variety of functions. So first is our advancement function. This is where we do fundraising with our industry partners. We do grant making for schools. We have our community partnerships team that's really focused on building out ecosystems so we can support students' experiences both inside and outside of the classroom as we work with higher ed and other nonprofits and industry. We do strategic partnership work where we help our industry partners engage in schools in a variety of ways. We do policy and government relations work. And then what I think is really important is our research, which is looking at the impact for teachers and students. I came to Project Lead the Way after many years in public education. I served as an elementary school teacher, a building administrator, district administrator, was a deputy superintendent, and was really called by the work at Project Lead the Way to support students and provide them opportunities. So thrilled to be here and thrilled to be part of Project Lead the Way.
Well, you lead a really great and very important team for us. And while we'll talk a lot about what happens in the classroom, the magic is really what happens outside the classroom, in the community, at the workplace, all over. And that's one of the things that we'll get into. And some of the STEM ecosystem work that you're leading is critical to that.
Yeah, we know that we can't do it alone. We have to partner with other individuals to ensure students have the best experience possible and are prepared for their futures.
Great. Excited to talk more about that. Joel, you lead a really critical part of our organization as well. It's really the genesis of the whole body of work that we do at Project Lead the Way is the courses that we provide, the assessments, all those things, professional development for teachers. Can you talk a little bit about your background?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, the product team is where all of the products get developed, obviously. That's where our instructional developers are housed. That's where our media and production folks are housed. And that's where we make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to meet the needs of the educators and students and administrators that are out there. I come to Project Lead the Way after many, many years in educational technology and curriculum development. Started my career as an elementary school teacher, what's now a long, long time ago, and was thrilled to have a chance to come join this organization and be a part of what we're doing to help schools around the country.
Great, thanks, Joel. I'm Dave Dimmitt. I'm the president and CEO at Project Lead the Way, a lifelong educator. I've had the good fortune of visiting Project Lead the Way schools in all 50 states over the last 15 years, and what I've seen is nothing short of remarkable. And we're excited to share that story with you today and also on future episodes of Inspired. Future podcasts will have, as I mentioned, members of our team, subject matter experts in a variety of areas. We'll also bring in policymakers. We'll bring in guests from business and industry partners, the folks that really help bring Project Lead the Way to life and make it incredibly relevant and highly engaging for students. Joel, as your team is building these experiences for students and also thinking about the range of supports that we want to provide for teachers, can you talk about why those career-connected, career-relevant learning experiences are so important, and especially early in a child's learning experience?
Yeah, this has everything to do with making things meaningful for kids. That's what engagement is really about. When kids feel attached to what it is they're doing, when they see a reason for it, when they want to persist, when they're curious, that's when learning becomes meaningful. It leads to better engagement in the classroom itself. It helps them connect their learning to the outside world. They want to come to school. They want to be there. They feel a part of the learning, and they see themselves as learners. And that's just a critical piece of what we do. We want to get that started early on.
So how do you, as you think about those experiences and that progression from early elementary school all the way through upper grades into middle school and high school, what are the things that the team is doing to make that learning career connected and relevant? Give a couple of examples of that.
Sure. There are a couple of different methods that we use in our pedagogy that help with that. One is by starting with something that's very concrete for kids, very well defined, something that they can feel success with early on, and then moving from there to the application of those concepts. So they'll take something that they didn't know before, get a firm understanding of it, and then start to see how to apply that to solve a problem or to complete a project. And then they can see the power of their own efficacy, of their own ability to learn and apply what they're doing.
I love that progression that you're talking about. And, we mentioned career-connected learning, the relevancy that brings to the classroom, and how that's getting a lot of attention right now. Also, a lot of attention being paid to project-based learning. Our version of project-based learning is a little bit different. You just described it, that progression from a more concrete activity to a project, then to an ill-defined problem. And in a way, I believe that's the magic, right? Is like life is full of ill-defined problems, but if you don't build the skills and the experience and the confidence to take those problems on and to be successful at doing that, then you're not really prepared, not just for a career, but for a lot of what life is going to bring to us. Is that what you see the team doing as they're creating those experiences?
Yeah, we know that the end game here is being out in the world, dealing with, like you said, ill-defined problems that happen in the workplace to every professional, to every adult in their daily lives. But jumping into those head first without any practice can leave you in a pretty tough place. So our whole idea is to provide the scaffolding that can help kids not just know information and concepts and skills, but know how to think, know how to reason critically, know how to evaluate, know how to put together what they've just learned with what they knew before, and know how to collaborate with other folks that they're working with, because that's what the world is. I know we use this term real world a lot. School is real world, life is real world, but there is the world outside of school, and that's what I want to prepare kids for.
As a classroom teacher, that was a term that always was frustrating to me to hear someone say, like, but this is real world. And it's like, well, I'm living in the real world in this classroom right now, and these kids are in the real world. So you just talked about something really important, which is skills, and we're going to come back and spend more time on that, because that's a really important part of what we've done for a long time. But now we're thinking about that a little differently and bringing that forward in the experience. But Katie, we were talking about relevancy, career-connected learning, engagement, and there's a lot of data out there that talks about the chronic absenteeism happening in schools. Students just simply are not willing to sit and listen the way maybe they were before. And you think about classroom management, you think about all the challenges that can be experienced in the classroom. What have you seen, and what has the team seen as far as in data or in some of the case studies around engagement? And how does this model drive engagement for students? Why is that important?
We know engagement for students is critical. And to your point, we continue to see coming out of the pandemic that absenteeism continues to get worse for students. They're not engaged in what's happening in the classroom. And so what I think is so powerful about what Joel's team does is they design our curriculum is really thinking about ways for students to get hands-on, to apply their learning, to solve problems that matter to them. That's the most important part. When you think about our activity, project, and problem-based approach, students are identifying things that matter in their community, in their context, and the skills that they're learning in the classroom help them solve those problems. So what we hear is when we are out talking to schools is that they specifically place Project Lead the Way courses sometimes to encourage students to come, to really think about where Project Lead the Way is, how students are involved in Project Lead the Way, because they know it matters for students, because it makes a difference. They show up at school. We know a school that changed their entire middle school schedule and courses to offer more Project Lead the Way offerings for students so that they could take those and be engaged in that content. Joel was talking about early opportunities for students to engage in this content. And I think about early exposure for students so that they're opting in, they're building confidence, they're building interest and engagement on these subjects, and that allows them to continue to develop that over time. And they have opportunities to gain clarity about what they're interested in doing, learn what they're strong at, what their skills are, and how those apply to all kinds of career paths. We know that most of the careers that our students are going to go into don't even exist yet. And so helping them develop those skills early and think flexibly about how they can apply them in different areas is really important. And there are a couple of student examples to me that really stand out about why this is important and how we help students decide what they like and what they don't like. Dave, you and I were in Massachusetts earlier this year celebrating our Engineering Teacher of the Year, and we had a chance to talk to one of the alumni from the school who had done the engineering pathway, and she chose law enforcement. She went through our engineering pathway, decided it wasn't for her, and chose to go into law enforcement, but what she said is all the skills that she learned through her Project Lead the Way courses were mattering to her in her role in law enforcement, her ability to communicate, her ability to reason. And then one example that just really speaks to me about early access for students is a Gateway student that I chatted with in Texas when we were doing a study there, who said that if it wasn't for Project Lead the Way, they wouldn't be the person that they are now. They wouldn't have discovered robotics. They wouldn't have discovered their love of coding. They wouldn't have found the things that they really love and who they are. And that just really, to me, communicates how important it is that students have these opportunities and they have them early, because they make a big difference in the choices that they make going forward.
Well, students become more self-directed learners when they have experiences like that. And that's the thing, as a former school administrator, I remember my students that were getting stuck and maybe not mastering various standards, or in some cases failing classes. They didn't see the relevance in that class, and they were often asking the question, like, when am I going to use this? When am I going to use this? And that's the question that a lot of educators have heard for a long time. I don't hear that in a Project Lead the Way classroom, because students are using it. What they don't necessarily know all the time is that right now I'm using math, or I'm building a simple machine, or I'm doing something to solve this problem. They're just solving a problem, but they're drawing from their core academic knowledge from across all of their experiences. And there have been a variety of movements since our time, all of us as classroom educators, administrators, whether it's College for All or CS for All. And I just think it's learning for all. It's relevant learning for all. And when you get students excited about their learning, we can't afford to send students out into the world who aren't in some way learners, right? Because you talked about careers are changing. And even in those fields that have been around for a long time, manufacturing is different today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 40 years ago. And you can name a field, and even those fields that remain, they have evolved, and technology has been a big part of that, but also learning how to work together. One of the things you talked about, the students in Massachusetts, in Brian Rhodes' classroom. Brian's a great example, and he represents 100,000 educators all across the country who are teaching in that really powerful, student-focused, engaging, relevant way. And I think that's one of the most important things we do, is recognize teachers like Brian. Another thing that we've been doing, and your team is leading this, is the Community Impact Award. So maybe talk a little bit about that, because to me, that is the application of what students are learning in a way that impacts and helps others. They're solving a real problem.
Yeah, we started the Community Impact Award last year, and to me, it's just so powerful. And it came out of a school visit that you and I did in North Carolina. And we saw students working together with students outside of their Project Lead the Way classrooms across their school to solve a problem that really mattered in their local community. They were working on a problem related to the river in their town. And so it really was this moment of, we are privileged enough to see what happens in a Project Lead the Way classroom all the time, and the amazing thinking that students are doing, and the solutions that they come up with for problems. But how could we elevate that to allow other people who don't get into Project Lead the Way classrooms to see that? And so that was where the Community Impact Award was born, which was this idea of having teachers or administrators nominate students who are leveraging the learning from their Project Lead the Way courses to solve problems either in their local community or the community at large. We were just there in Connecticut last week celebrating the high school students who won the Community Impact Award for this year. And it's really incredible what the students choose to focus on, because it matters to them. And it's outside of what they're doing in their normal school day, but they're able to apply their learning. And in a lot of cases, to your point, Dave, they connect with students who maybe aren't Project Lead the Way students, but are in another class from them and have different skills, and they work together to solve these problems.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about what we get to do and where we sit in the student experience and how we help teachers is, a lot of school is about pulling learning apart. You have discrete areas of knowledge. You have math down one hall, science down another, language over here. And the power of the experience you just described is we're helping students put that back together. And that is life. Life is, I don't go out and I have 45 minutes of my day where I do math, and then another 45 minutes where I'm using my language skills. It comes at you fast in life, and you have to be ready to integrate all of those areas of knowledge to do something that's worth doing, right? And whether that's in your personal life, at work. And so I love what you're describing. You talked about our visit to Buncombe County. Sounds like we visit schools together a lot. It is one of the most important things we do, is to go out and witness firsthand the challenges that educators are facing, but also the ways that they are doing exactly what we're describing, which is making learning powerful and getting students excited about that. And in some cases, for the first time. But you talked about that visit to Buncombe County and the teacher there, Claude Chiron. Claude was our very first ever Robert and Patricia Kern National Teacher of the Year. We've given that award away, almost a dozen times now, but he was the first. And that model for how students can get outside the classroom, think about what are the problems worth solving in their community, and then come back and take action is powerful. There are a lot of career connections in the curriculum, and it's that progression that we're building on purpose to help students around career awareness early, pre-K to 5. Then we get into that career exploration, and then more deeper at the high school experience into career preparation. So your team is building that experience.
That's right. So we'll start by talking about the advisories, like you said, Dave. Thinking about the advanced manufacturing course that we're working on now, but it's a model we use regularly. We'll bring in members of that advisory from industry, from academia, to help us make sure we understand what the current state of that field looks like, to make sure that we have ideas coming from the real world, like we were talking about, that can find their way into our learning experiences. We want to make sure, if you're going to make something relevant, make sure it's something that comes from that world. So often those activities, projects, and problems are inspired by or taken from or actually replicas of things that have happened with our industry partners. And there really is no more valuable insight that we can get other than talking to those advisors. So that's the way our advisory works. Every single new course that we develop has a committee like that we work with. But you talked also about the career connections features that we have. So career connections features are embedded throughout our curriculum, K-12. Like you said, in elementary, that looks like awareness. We want young kids to be aware of careers that are out there. We like to say you can't be it if you can't see it. So that's a really important part of that early on. There's a big difference between interest and aptitude, and we find that kids can only be interested in things that they've heard of or that they see in their immediate world around them, but they have aptitudes that go far beyond that. In fact, we see lots of difference between boys and girls where their interests are very different, but it turns out their aptitudes aren't. And so if we can key into that, we can get them aware of their own aptitudes and the careers that connect to those early on, they really start to think differently than they otherwise would about careers. So in elementary, it's very much about awareness. When we get to middle school and in our Project Lead the Way Gateway program, we're talking about exposure. So now we're starting to narrow in a little bit more, go deeper into the careers that are tied directly to the learning experiences that kids have. And then in our high school pathways for biomedical science, computer science, and engineering, we're talking about planning. So now kids are really starting to see their own path into these careers, learn what it takes to get there, starting to think about credentialing themselves for entry into the workforce, whether that means entering a skilled trade right after they leave high school or soon after they leave high school, or whether it means entering a career after obtaining a post-secondary degree. All of our Career Advantage campaign and our programs, all of our career learning is about moving from awareness to exposure to planning.
So the experience that you're building, these connections that in many cases are facilitated through Katie's team, that culminates in a real advantage for students when they complete that experience. There's a study that Indiana University did several years ago. It talked about a dosage effect. So it's, because getting just a small amount of that kind of experience is good, but a dosage effect means basically the more you get of that kind of career-connected, highly relevant, engaging experience, the better prepared you are. So talk a little bit about some of the studies or some of the data points that you've seen. And you started the research team, which is, and now it's been several years, but that team is working with researchers at other institutions. You're doing case studies. Talk a little bit about that part of our work and what you've seen the evidence.
Yeah, it's really powerful. We try to do kind of two things. We really focus on big R research, which is where we partner with external university researchers to look at outcomes for students, and then kind of little R research where we do some of these case studies and deep dives into things that are happening in schools across the country to help other schools know what's possible. And so I would say when we think about kind of traditional research, we are lucky enough to be able to partner with research-based institutions at universities across the country to look at outcomes for students. And the things that really have been important findings that I think are really powerful are when we think about high school outcomes for students. Our students tend to outperform their peers when it comes to their math and science scores, and state assessments have higher graduation rates, more likely to enroll in a post-secondary, more likely to choose a STEM degree and complete those degrees. And we found that they have higher earnings when they go into the workforce. So really positive outcomes on that side. We also spend a lot of time looking at our students' engagement and interest and satisfaction as we think about how they're feeling about the content and the courses that we're offering them, so we can get feedback directly from students. And we're able to do case studies where we can dive deep in a school or a district and really look at outcomes within a community and think about how that could be applicable to other locations. So like one example is in Indiana, we looked at Washington, Indiana. It's a rural high school. It's small. They don't have a lot of industry partners nearby, and so they've had to get creative. They offer all three of our pathways. They got creative with naval warships and crane and brought engineers on site. They couldn't send students there for internships. They brought them on site to do activities with students. And so they've really thought about it. And so that's helpful when we talk to other smaller schools that say, I don't know if we can create those opportunities. And we can say, let's look at where it's already happened and how we can help you think that through.
Yeah, I think that's one of the nice things about where we are today as an organization is that we have a great team out in the field that's working with local schools, helping them connect with other educators. And while we've all been educators, it's been a few years since we've actually been responsible for the classroom. But the power of the model is this 100,000 teachers that we've supported all across the country, connecting them with others who are in similar situations or trying to solve similar challenges in their community, and connecting the administrators too. I think that's a really important part of what we do. The work that we've done for 30 years is around helping students get excited about and prepared for great careers. It started with engineering. We worked our way into a biomedical science pathway, computer science, and computer science, as you know, cybersecurity, a number of CS courses, including courses that count for graduation requirements for students. So that's a really powerful shift for us. It connects not just to the community side, but also to careers. You work with a lot of our partners, John Deere, Toyota, Chevron, AWS, a whole lot of ARDA. Why are those partners so important? Why is that career connection such an important part of what we do?
So for me, I really think about the fact that, to your point earlier, Dave, industry changes. Even, to your point about advanced manufacturing, it doesn't look the same as it did 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so a big part of our connection to our industry partners is how do we ensure that what we're teaching students is relevant and is keeping pace with the changing time? So are the tools that they're leveraging in the classroom mirroring the tools that they would see out in industry? Are the ways we're approaching certain content the same way that they're doing it now? So it's really important to keep us relevant and ensure that the content we have is up to date for students. But I think it's even more than that as we think about how partners want to engage with schools, because it's not just supporting, Project Lead the Way curriculum, it's supporting the students. It's thinking about how they can mentor. It's thinking about how they can create learning opportunities, whether it's site visits or internships. That takes their learning and just continues to extend it. They provide opportunities where students get to connect with professionals and learn more about what these roles look like. And to me, that is just so important in thinking about students having the opportunity to learn more and make informed decisions as they go forward.
Yeah. We don't want students to be limited by their zip code or maybe their family situation or the proximity of a certain type of career opportunity. We want them to know all the opportunities that are available to them, and by the time they work through and are embarking on career, enlistment, higher ed experience, they have options and they're prepared for those options. So I want to thank you both for joining. We're going to finish this conversation in part 2. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Be sure to send us your topics. If there's other areas that you want us to explore on future episodes, please email those to inspired@pltw.org.